Now, from the 1950s, American policymakers have looked at India as the counter to China. This goes back to the 1962 war when the US supported and assisted India. And the image of India as the counter to China has remained strong and has re-emerged in recent years. It is visible in the US National Security Strategy, Indo-Pacific Strategy, renaming PACOM as Indo-PACOM, the Quad, statements made by high-level American officials. During the latest 2+2 ministerial, American support for India in its current standoff with China was on full display. However, American support for India in its conflict with China has not yet automatically translated into US viewing the China-Pakistan relationship with the same lens as Delhi does. US grand strategy has normally centered around global interests, and it has often tended to accommodate regional issues within the global interests. So, for example, as all of you know, during the Cold War, American focus was on peer competition with Soviet Union, which meant it looked at every region primarily on who would ally with the US against the Soviets. In South Asia, this meant the US supported Pakistan and not the natural power of the region, India. A strong US-India partnership notwithstanding, American national security strategy still revolves around its national interests, and regional issues are always viewed from that prism. So for India, Pakistan may be a part of the China problematic. For the US, China is the global issue, Pakistan is a regional one. Now, Pakistan was an American ally, a frontline state during the war on terrorism, obtained over $40 billion in security and economic assistance. Because the US policy towards Pakistan rested on trying to convince Pakistan's military establishment to change its strategic calculus. Didn't happen. And in recent years, especially under the Trump administration, US policy has been one of minimal engagement, no security assistance, and rather applying pressure on Pakistan for specific issues, act against terror groups, support, the end game in Afghanistan. While Washington has followed the deepening Sino-Pakistan relationship, there's still a presumption that the US wields enough soft and hard power leverage over Pakistan. American diplomats argue that at the end of the day, the Pakistani elite prefer to send their children to United States to study, that American economic investment is needed by Pakistan, and that despite access to Chinese military technology, Islamabad will need continued access to American military equipment, and especially American spare parts. What I would argue, and some others do as well, is that this ignores that there have been changes in the China-Pakistan relationship. 1/5 of Pakistan's debt is owed by China. Contrast to 8,000 Pakistani students studying in the US, over 100,000 Pakistani students study in China. And there has been a steady rise in the amount of Chinese military equipment used by the Pakistan military.